Welcome to Are We There Yet? I'm Katy Gosset. And when a baby comes into the world, his or her relationship with food becomes all important. It's about survival, after all.
The nurse offers advice on natural feeding to give the baby the best possible start in life. Breastfeeding has great benefits, physical and psychological, for both mother and baby.
But as we get older, it seems like that relationship just gets more complicated.
I try to tell her she's beautiful, be herself, but it's really hard because there's always just, no, I don't want to do it because I'm fat.
I still now find it so hard to believe that my daughter ended up an anorexic.
And it can often have more to do with a person's emotions than with their actual body.
If an eating disorder has evolved, it's seldom primarily around the body beautiful. Often, eating disorders are around managing emotions, and it's about control and about the sense of self.
Catherine Gallagher, a clinical psychologist, explaining the different roles an eating disorder can play in a young person's life.
If you've got someone who is feeling a little bit out of control, or there's a lot of pressures in their life, one of the things that from day dot children can have a bit of control over, one, it's pooing and one, it's eating.
And it's not about trying to grab our attention.
No one chooses to develop an eating disorder any more than you'd choose to have any other illness. People might just say, stop it. Can you understand what you're doing to yourself or the stress you're causing? They may be able to understand, but may feel at a loss as to what they can do about it.
For one mother's daughter, it began with some bullying comments at school, suggesting that if she ate everything in her lunchbox, she'd get fat. And soon enough, those lunches started to shrink.
When I questioned her, she very cleverly would just retort, "Oh, Mum, you don't need to worry. I went to Subway after school," or "we shared pizza at lunchtime as well." There was always something to try and take me off track.
A stomach injury after a horse riding accident gave her another excuse to stop eating, but her mother was beginning to have real reservations.
Even though I had that nagging voice like, it could be, no, there's no way that's my daughter. There's absolutely no way that's my daughter. So when she was assessed, it was a huge, huge deal to me. To my husband and I, we just about collapsed. On one part, it was a relief because we had a name for it. On the other part, it was again like, this just can't be happening to us. And then, of course, I actually got to physically see her unintentionally undressed, and I got to see the real result of what had happened, and it was mind-blowing and shocking, soul-destroying actually, to see that she had actually was willing to keep going to the point there was nothing left of her, and that was all part of this whole mental disorder that had completely and utterly taken over at this point. And it was no longer my daughter, it was full-blown anorexia.
And as a family, they were about to begin the toughest fight of their lives.
We had no idea what we were in for, and it really was absolute hell. It's like dealing with a 15-year-old toddler who had no rational thinking whatsoever. Her brain was so starved at this point that getting her to eat was virtually impossible.
In the end, she was admitted to Princess Margaret Hospital and began what's been a long journey to recovery. So, what then do you look out for? What are the signs, and how do you know if something like this is becoming serious?
The point at which you become concerned is when it starts to interrupt functioning.
Catherine Gallagher again, our clinical psychologist.
If you step back a little bit and look at the pattern over time and you're noticing, oh gosh, it's more meals than not, or yes, they might not have breakfast, but in fact they're not eating much for lunch either, and so it's that kind of generalised kind of pattern.
Other things to watch for might be comments about weight or body image, or rigidity around the topic itself, so not wanting to talk about it when it comes up. And Catherine Gallagher says that's when parents need to step in and take the reins.
That might mean you're saying, well, if you're wanting to do the exercise, then the minimum expectation is that you eat this. Or that I am observing, as opposed to trusting that you've said, oh, I had 5 sandwiches today, Mum. Actually, I need to see you eating those. And using whatever their currency is, whether it's sport, whether it's they want to get their hair dyed, whether it's access to friends, say, these are the choices in front of you. There's kind of an easy way, which is you're going to be able to get access to the thing you're wanting to do. Or the hard way is that we're going to sit here until you do eat, even if that takes us all night.
And it also reassures them that eating a little bit more isn't the end of the world.
The all or nothing thinking
that often goes along with this is that a little bit equals suddenly chaos, and I'm fat and I'm 10-ton tilly and there's just, it's disgusting, as opposed to I've just had a little bit outside my rigid rule around what I can eat. So one of the things about getting kids eating regular amounts is that they get exposed to that regularly and the world doesn't stop. The things they fear don't happen.
Catherine Gallagher says some people withdraw from the problem. They put it in the too hard basket because they don't know what to do. But in those cases, she says that's when you need to seek professional help so you feel you've got the support to help your child fight this thing. Especially when you consider that even before the days of YouTube makeup tutorials, we've been constantly bombarded with social expectations and images of perfection.
Now, makeup really matters. Smart shoes, stylish clothes fail if your makeup is wrong. Do you know the correct shades of lipstick, rouge and powder for your individual colouring? Why not visit the Cashmere Bouquet Cosmetic Bar at Woolworths?
And some social media and websites can actively promote unhealthy behaviour.
So you've got people being exposed to ideas and behaviours and strategies actually encouraging eating disordered behaviours. People saying, it's great if you're doing this stuff and the skinnier the better, because it's the ultimate sign of control. So of course, as part of intervening around this stuff, it's opening up conversations with kids, but it's also monitoring, the social media that they are using.
And in less serious cases, there are other things parents can do to help their children counter those messages.
Help them be critical evaluators of the information they see through social media. And as situations come up, a comment might be made, opening up those lines of communication around body image and around how they're managing their stress.
And knowing that stress and control are factors in eating disorders, being aware of what's going on in your child's life.
Now, that doesn't mean you become a sticky beak and you get kind of into poking and prodding into every aspect of their life. But it is about stepping back and going, what are some of the themes coming through? And you'll know your child by now. Are they someone who is a bit of an anxious pants? Are they someone who, takes control and likes to be in charge? So those are things that you can kind of just be aware of.
And again, if you as a parent model healthy eating habits to your child, chances are you won't have to panic.
Lots of kids will go through phases where they think they've got an extra roll around their middle and, eat a little bit less. Most of us can't sustain that. It doesn't take too much for us to kind of get back into regular eating habits, especially if the food and expectation is really clear around that stuff.
Apple time, whether you're 9 or 99, has the healthy golden rule, take some apples with you to school.
But sometimes even if we model healthy eating, a child might have particular preferences or limitations that started early on, and they can be quite hard to shift. So it's up to us as well. If we've fallen into the habit of making a meal that's easy and no one complains about, then we might need to change our ways too.
In a lot of families, you'll notice that parents will cook what their kids will eat. Because why would I cook up something exotic if it's not going to get eaten? It is about biting that bullet and thinking, okay, we just might ever so slightly extend the repertoire a little bit.
And in those early stages, before an eating disorder has actually taken hold, it's important to listen to concerns from your child and take them seriously.
When a child comes to you with a problem, a strong desire we have as a parent is, oh, don't be silly. Whereas in actual fact, what we want to do is go, oh, I can see that's really worrying you. Tell me about that a little bit. So they may not, but to validate the fact that it's a real concern and to say that's really normal for kids your age to, especially around the 10, 11-year-old age group, to start comparing themselves to other people, because that's when we kind of get to that stage where we go, oh, well, this is me, but that's you, and how are we different? How are you better? And I'm worse, that whole comparative stage. So often kids' self-esteem might take a bit of a kick around that age group. And again, that's normal and natural.
And then there are developmental milestones, and they're natural too.
Children are going to have some puppy fat, and so they should, because in actual fact, they need it to grow. And so being able to, as a parent with confidence, normalise that and explain and even show photographs of themselves or whatever at a certain age, and then look what happened when I grew. So to start off those conversations with kids and to say, well, I can hear that you're concerned about it, and we can look at your balance in your life. But as a parent, I'm going to encourage a healthy lifestyle as opposed to one that's aimed for you to be too skinny, because skinny's not healthy.
And while eating disorders remain a risk, both for girls and boys, it's worth remembering that recovery is possible, and the girl in this story has turned a corner.
She still has a long way to go mentally. She is still not fully accepting of her changed body. But if I look at the bigger picture and I look at where she was a year ago, it's dramatically different. So that gives me hope.
And that's us for today. This podcast was produced and presented by me, Katy Gosset, with musical assistance from Adam McCauley. Tim Watkin is our executive producer, and that historic audio comes from Ngā Taonga Sound and Vision and Archives New Zealand. Now, if you enjoyed the podcast, don't forget to rate us on iTunes or check out some other RNZ podcasts like Great Ideas. You can find that on the RNZ website or again on iTunes. And don't forget to join me for the next episode when I'll talk about being a dad, or specifically, dads will talk to me about the expectations and baggage around modern fatherhood.